Hey now, it's Ruben with Help Find the Others. How you guys doing? Hope everyone's well. Uh, I, you know, First off, I want to start with gratitude for everyone who left a comment or sent me an email for my last video. Uh, it's awesome that people still have notifications and you're like, hey, that guy made another video. uh, and it's really great. Thank you for taking the moment to reach out because um, it's very motivating for me to make another video like this, but um, it's also, I just like seeing the messages and whenever someone resonates with something I was thinking at the time and I put out into the universe and, you get recognition back from that and connection, uh, that helps us all feel a little more connected in this crazy world. So thank you very much. And before I had something I was thinking about today that I was like, that would make a good video. But before I do that, I do want to mention, like I said in my other video, where I've been focusing on music. Um, I One of my bands, we are finally Spotify official. So we recorded a little demo, just recorded it ourselves. It's pretty good quality, but it's not like it took a lot of time. I mean, uh, it was just in our practice space or whatever. Um, I'm gonna put the Spotify link in the description of the video, and if you're feeling like listening to some stupid, heavy psychedelic music, go listen to my songs and let me know what you think, and follow us on Spotify and stuff like that. And I'm sure there'll be more to come, and we're hoping to start gigging later this year and everything. But anyway, I was thinking about today, as I'm mindlessly scrolling through YouTube, at the increasing amount of videos I see talking about, you know, this like financial nihilism basically of Gen Z and some younger millennials that I see of saying the system's rigged against them and, um, it's impossible. They're not having kids. That's the one that sparked my thought process, that like, uh, someone talking about like, yeah, no shit, there's a birth rate crisis. Like when we can't even afford to live, how are we going to bring a kid into this world, right? A lot of videos like that. A lot of videos talk about impossible to get a job, and you know the boomers took all the money and all this stuff, right? Which, like, I understand. I feel those same uh, feelings. But what I wanted to talk about was that you know I love looking at the generations, like the breakdown of generations and their influence and how that evolves through time. Because the reaction I see to the economy from Gen Z right now and the reaction from like Gen X and boomers and older people towards Gen Z is exactly what was happening 25 years ago as what they said about the millennials, right? Everybody would be like, "Oh, stupid millennials, shut your mouth," whatever. Because I mean, it was squarely the millennial generation that was behind the Occupy Wall Street stuff. So we were arguing about the same thing then, right? And has nothing fixed? No, it hasn't, and it's probably gotten worse. Um, I think the the really viral reaction from Gen Z on social media towards the economy now is because of how big the inflationary impact was of the response to COVID. Like, you can't shut the world down and print, a sixth of all the dollars that have ever existed over the course of like 2 months. You can't do that without some like really extreme downstream effects in the economy, and that's what we're seeing now. But the message I want to to get out to Gen Z from a millennial, and I'm an older millennial, but I mean I'm still squarely in the millennial generation. Um, the message I want to get out is like the economy and the stages of life are completely fucking different. And every stage of life, whoever's in that state, whatever generation is in that stage of life at that time, is going to be feeling a similar way about it. regardless of what the situation is, because there is no utopian economy that someone's going to grow up from being a teenager to 30 and be like, hey, this is great, it's super easy. Like, those days are behind us. Once we got off the gold standard, that was gone. Okay. But even before then, I would be willing to bet if you interviewed, say, a silent generation, 80-year-old or an older person right now, and asked like how they felt about the 20s, well, it was probably a pretty scary time for them too, regardless of what the economy was like. And it may have been a way better economy or whatever. And I think I was trying to relate the generational breakdown that we talk so much about in Western society, right? And we give names to all these generations. It actually lines up with the Hindu stages of life that I believe is called samsara. Um, and if you read about it, there's basically four stages to life. The text that I read, uh, said that humans generally live to be 100, which isn't that true, but I guess maybe at that time they did in India or something whenever that was written. But that you can break that up into four, and it's a cycle that you just keep redoing. And the first stage is the learning stage, right, where you're a student of not just school but like of life and the world. You're figuring out how it all works. And then the next stage is the householder stage, where you're you're making a home and a life for other people and your family and having kids and all of that stuff and building a nest egg, whatever. And then uh, the third stage is the I think they call it forest dweller, um, and that's where you just kind of like gradually over the course of that stage back away from worrying about political issues and the world and all that stuff, and start kind of transitioning more into a spiritual path of trying to figure out the spirituality behind humanity. Um, and you start turning over power to the next generation, your kids or whatever. And then the final stage is where you totally withdraw and only focus on spiritual stuff. So that would be like, I don't know if you saw this video that went viral a little while back where like these soldiers were like going through the Himalayas, and they were like just on top of this mountain, like all snow everywhere. And there was this dude, I don't even know if it was real, it may have been a fake video or whatever, but it was like this, you know, Hindu guy just like sitting in the middle of like covered in snow, just meditating and like completely unaware that they were even there. So it's like people like that would be the fourth stage. And then, the idea behind samsara is you keep going through that cycle until you reach enlightenment, and then you leave the cycle. And, I think that's the Hindu version of heaven or whatever. Well, and I was like kind of comparing that because I'm like, okay, so there's more generations alive at any one time in our generational model that we call, boomers, Gen X, millennial, um, Gen Z, and then I think it's Gen Alpha is the little kids now, and then the silent generation is like my grandparents' age. Well, they're not with us anymore, but I mean that the like 80 and above, right? Um, which there's more generations than those four, but there's four that are like actually controlling society, like that have their hands on the wheel of where we're going and what the culture becomes, right? And I think the millennials were guilty of this, and I think viewing from the outside that Gen Z is as well, where youth may be the engine of the world because they drive cultural change, but they can't change it themselves. They can only bring about the awareness. Okay, it's on the older generations, the people that are in that householder uh, stage of life, um, to actually enact that change and to actually start um, moving the needle towards whatever the zeitgeist is moving towards. And you so I guess what I'm getting at too is my generation has to be a little better at listening to the younger generation and not just be going, oh, stupid Gen Z complaining about stuff. It was so tough when I was growing up, which it was. That's what I'm trying to get at. That's what Occupy Wall Street was all about, right? Like we were really fed up with not being able to buy a home, and there was all these things that we were right on the precipice of like leaving our adulthood, or we were just entering our adulthood and finding out how crazy hard it is to get by in this world. But now that we're older and we figured it out, we're not doing a good job of listening to Gen Z. So Gen Z and the millennials both need to like stop and look in the mirror and really like listen to what each other are saying. And then the other generations, the older generations, they have to stop hanging on to the power. That's why our government doesn't work, right? Because people stay in it way too long when they shouldn't be a part of this anymore. We shouldn't have 85-year-old senators. Like, they should be on a spiritual path. They're in the end of their life. They shouldn't still be in control. So I don't know. Read up on the Indian or the Hindu uh, life cycle layout, and then really look at what we call the generational divides and stuff like that in Western society, and like they kind of line up. I think there's some like universal wisdom in there, and if that's the case, then stop being afraid that you know some stupid government of the last 50 years, or well, I would say the economy started being really hard when we went off the gold standard in 71. So if there's thousands and thousands of years of universal wisdom that is kind of still proven to be true, stop being afraid that from one stupid economic decision from one country in 1971 totally threw all that out of the window. It didn't. That stuff is all made up. The economy, money, all of that is made up. The cycle of life is not made up. You can't stay young forever, and so you're going to continue getting older, and you're going to continue, the influence you have on those around you and the society you live in is going to shift as you get older. Now, is there four distinct stages? Maybe not, but it makes a lot of sense when you look at the breakdown of society from the generation, like the names of the generations we put on them. But I don't know. Read into that stuff. Let me know what you think. I hope that wasn't too rambly. Um, but yeah, and please, like I said, I'll put my band's Spotify description or link in the description. And if you're feeling froggy, check that out. And until next time, I'll see you guys.